I'm talking about an hour ago.
Well, hi everybody. It's Joe Rayo here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show.
Excuse me?
Well, you're here on the
I'm,
Joe and Joe Weather Show. You're
yeah,
Joe
but I'm telling
Rayo.
everybody. You're telling everybody that you're Joe Rayo.
No, you're Joe Rayo
Oh
over
yes,
there,
of
right
course.
there,
Right.
and
You're
I'm the other Joe.
all right. I just got to get myself comfortable here.
Oh, please do.
Set in. Jeopardy is over. I mean, Jeopardy's on now, but the championship round is the best of all time is over. And Ken Jenkins won. Ken.
Ken
Why do I
Jennings.
keep saying Ken Jenkins? Ken Jennings won last night.
He did, and yeah, I didn't watch any of it. I don't know. I just didn't. I had it on the other day. It popped on when it was on. I think on Saturday night and Final Jeopardy. Uh, and the Final Jeopardy, I think, was interesting people or something was the category. I don't even
I think it had
remember.
something to do with Shakespeare.
Oh,
I,
was it? Yeah.
I think the
No.
answer was Yago. And I said to my wife, I said, "You mean Yago Sangria?"
Yeah. All right. So let's get this started here, folks. I'm this to me, Joe. I was kind of looking at everything and a couple of things. Uh, I have a couple of Briller stats from our Scott Briller. I have to
Okay.
dig them up. One of the things, guys, when you throw me with like, tidbits and stats, one thing I am really terrible about is remembering whatever it is you tell me. So, and being that I'm as old as I am, it's not likely to get much better. So, I try to write them down, and then I forget to write them down, and it usually takes me a good month to develop, a habit of doing what I'm, writing stuff down. So, don't take it personal if I forget something. But of course, now I'm trying. Now that I have them all generally in one place, I can't load them. All right, so we'll have to come back to them.
Technology, Joe. Technology.
Well, part of this, you're still getting a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth because it's January 15th and we haven't had 100 inches of snow yet in New York City, which of course is, outrageous. But as Scott has mentioned, and we pointed out, you and I many times, most of the time, most years, snowfall around here is below average, and the last 20 years, we've only seen we had 2 years in a row of below average winters, oh 06, oh 07, oh 07, oh 08. So we haven't had another back to back below average winter snow wise. And then you go back to the period from 1925 to 1999, and you could find instances of 4, 5, even 7 or 8 years in a row of below average snowfall.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we've been saying all along that a lot of the people who are watching right now did not live or were not aware of the decades of, let's say, the 70s and 80s and even the 90s, where more often than not we were dealing with below normal snowfall. It was a rarity. It was a treat, if you were a snow lover, to enjoy for example, the winter of 77, 78, where we had not one but two massive snowfalls. We hadn't seen that in a good long time. In fact, that was the most debilitating winter since 1969, the
Right.
winter of 78.
So now, here's another Briller stat from the chairman. Okay, so since 1816, since 1869, there have been 190 of these during the winter months. Joe Rayo.
Wait a minute, 190 of
The
these?
Jeopardy answer is since 1869, there have been 190 of these. Joe Rayo in the
100,
wintertime.
190?
Right.
But that's more than the number of years that we're going back to 1868 or 69.
Right. So it's happened 190 times since 1869 in the wintertime.
I don't know.
Joe Rayo put it in the form of a question.
What is below normal months that had snow?
No, sorry. That is incorrect. The
Okay.
answer is there have been 190 6-inch or more snowstorms since 1869. So a little bit more than, if you want to average it out, a little bit more than one a year. But
Yes,
that's probably not a good thing to do, if only because of the fact that in snowy winters you could easily have 3, 4, or 5 6-inch snowfalls. Okay, and then
right.
you could also go 3, 4, or 5 years without a 6-inch snowfall. So
Okay.
so that's it's a little the number is not deceptive. The number is the number, but if to average it out over a period of 150 years to come out with and say, well, you average a little bit more than one a year, the reality is you're probably way up at the top of the scale or way up at the bottom of the scale most of the time. Now, 130 of them have occurred after January 15th, and today is January 15th.
Yes,
So you still have. So what you can get from this is that there is a fairly high probability that you will see a 6-inch snowfall before the winter is out, even though you haven't had one up until now.
right.
Anyway, just putting that out there. And of course, we often po- uh, focus on New York stats. And for those of you who are watching from elsewhere, you check your local Climo spot. Like, for example, if you're down in southeastern Pennsylvania, the stats for Philly are significantly different in a lot of ways to the stats from New York City, as are the stats from Boston. So you come up with all sorts of different numbers. Obviously, Boston gets more snow every year than New York City, which gets more snow every year in general than Philadelphia. But there are exceptions along the way. So we've got this thing for Saturday. Everybody's now gotten to the point where they've actually, it's kind of funny, Joe. We're at Wednesday, and we're still 2.5 days away, right? A
Right.
little less than 3 days away.
Right.
And everywhere I've read a massive throwing in the towel. I don't think I've seen a throwing in the towel as massively as I'm seeing in this event. So wouldn't it be grand if we wound up with? I mean, you're not going to get a big surprise out of this, but you might wind up with a little bit of a surprise.
I think we're still in at least in parts of the lower Hudson Valley. I think that we could get a thump of snow leading off. First of all, if you recall, just a few days ago, we were talking about this possibly beginning as soon as late Friday night or first thing in the morning on Saturday. And it's looking more and more, Joe, like for most of our viewers, this thing may not even start until after, let's say, noon or 1 o'clock on Saturday. And it's now looking like, we may get, as I said, a thump, maybe 6 hours worth that may drop a couple to 3, maybe 4 inches, and then maybe enough of a warming trend to change everything to sleet, ice, and eventually even some plain rain. So it's not going to be one of those classic heavy duty snows, but you may get a cheap thrill on the front end during the afternoon hours of Saturday before things start to change Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really, to me, it's going to boil down to what kind of presentation do we get on the radar coming in ahead of all that, because basically this is just to me it's just a giant warm front that's coming through, and sometimes you could get some supercharged precip ahead of it if you could create something that puts down a quarter to a half an inch of liquid. Somebody's going to wind up with 2, 3, or 4 inches out of this. If you could hold off the changeover at the coast, I mean, at least aloft, it's going to stay cold enough, long for a while. So if you can get the precip to maintain a certain degree of intensity, so you can, do a little bit of dynamic cooling and hold on to it for a while, you might wind up, it might wind up being a surprise. And for inland areas, if you can hold on to it for an extra hour or so, you could wind up with a slightly bigger surprise.
I agree
You good?
absolutely. It's
Uh,
a, it's not so much we've also been talking about possibly a secondary forming that pretty much. I'm not saying it's off the table, but what I'm saying is, as we've been saying now for the last 24 36 hours, it looks like the primary system, which is more of a warm front for us than anything else, is going to be the deal that's going to give us whatever.
Yeah,
If
because
that's
then once it changes to rain, after a couple of hours, even the rain's going to be done. It
right.
goes out pretty quick. Let me just acknowledge really quick. We've got Robert Russo, Paul Roman, Johnny Quest. Those are the three super chat hits that I can see. But apparently, Joe, there were some two earlier on. I don't know if you can see them, but so Steve Lapointe I have here, Johnny Quest, Paul Roman, Robert Russo, and
I
that's
have
all I can see. And I
I
know
have
that there might have been two or three more before that.
Steve LaPont,
Got him.
Johnny Quest,
Got him.
Paul Roman,
Got him.
Robert Russo,
Right.
and that's it.
Okay, because I saw two up there before that. Oh no, that's right. Those numbers. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot for hitting super chat, guys. Thank you so much. We both appreciate it. And the show has only gotten started. So I'm going to go over a few things, Mr. Rayo, regards to what's going on weather-wise. I'm going to start off with the Weather Service watches and warnings map because we have actually wind advisories up for tomorrow. I made you full screen. I wasn't supposed to do that. Oh, there's two of you,
Really?
Joe. Hold on.
Excuse me?
I got
There are
two
two
of
of
you
me?
on the screen. Yeah. Boy,
Really?
Sister Charles Edwards would have had a field day with identical twins of you. I'm sorry, I had to bring her up. I have really drawn close to to the concept of Sister Charles Edwards. So here we go. So you've got wind advisories up from the mountains of western North Carolina and western Virginia, all the way up the eastern half of Pennsylvania, all of New Jersey, Delaware, much of New York State, and much of southern and southeastern New England. Tonight we have winter storm warnings for northeastern New York and northern Vermont, winter weather advisories that extend from northern New York over into northern New Hampshire and much of Maine. With this lead system that's going through, there's probably going to be a 3 to 6 inch snowfall up in that range. And now we've got preemptive winter weather advisories and winter storm watches that have gone up for our system that's coming here for Saturday. And those are up from West Texas, western Oklahoma, much of Kansas, the winter storm watches for the northern half of Missouri, much of Iowa, and southwestern Wisconsin. And still crazy busy, by the way, Joe, with winter weather up in the Pacific Northwest, where we've got winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories. I'll send you the link on YouTube, Joe. Robert Brown sent me a link from, I think it was KING TV up in Seattle with the snowstorms that have been going on there near the coast, out near Puget Sound. There are people who have been stranded out there for almost a week with and they're running supplies to them. Generators are running out. They need diapers. They need food. They need water, drinking water. Uh, all from snowstorms up in the Northwest, which really they're not on the coast. They're not really used to them. They don't. In the last few years, they've gotten quite a few of them, but they
Right.
still don't really get used to that.
Yeah, it's Seattle. I heard Seattle last week had a storm that dropped about 2 to 6 inches, which is big news for Seattle. And now here they go again. It's amazing. This kind of like it was last year for them.
Yeah, hang on a second, Joe. Uh, Okay, I am not understanding why I am having trouble. I cannot keep my earbuds in my ear tonight for some reason.
Every night you tell us
I
that
know.
that you're going to go out and get headphones, and we deal with this every night now, Joe.
You know what it is? I haven't. When we when the day gets underway, when the day gets underway, feel like I have a lot of time, and then it gets away from me, and it
Right.
got away from me today. I was going to order them on Amazon, and then I said, you know what? Let me just run out to Walmart, and now we're doing the show. So you know what? After the show, I'm going to run out to Walmart and get myself a pair of headsets, and that's all there is to it. So
Yeah.
there are your watches and warnings, and a lot going on the satellite tonight. We've got, we're still. I have the loop up, Joe. This little box of clearing showed up today for us. What a beautiful day we had. It was wall to wall sunshine from start to finish.
Yeah, I said to you before we went on, I spent part of the afternoon, believe it or not, doing some work on my lawn, mowing the lawn, because there were a lot of dead leaves that got blown around and still scattered about my lawn. So I figured, what the heck? So I got the little lawnmower out and I did some vacuuming, so to speak, on the front lawn. And I'm saying to myself as I'm doing this, I said, it's the 15th of January. I can't even remember the last time I pulled out the lawnmower in January, but here we were on a day where temperatures were, at least locally here at the home base, 48 degrees. And this is going to be the last time I think I'm going to see 48 in a good long time, looking at the mid and long range outlooks temperature wise. I took full advantage of it today.
Good, good. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second here. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty trying to load up
You remember back in the
a
60s,
page.
channel when in channel 5 especially when they'd have a technical difficulty, they'd play some like Montevani music and they'd have a slide and you could see almost like a thumbprint on the slide and it said please stand by and you'd have Fred Scott or Ed Ladd or Tom Gregory, one of the staff announcers, saying we're experiencing technical difficulties, please stand by, dun 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 dun, dun.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know. And you'd sit there as a kid. Why am I lost? Why is Lost in Space not on?
why isn't Bugs Bunny on now?
Exactly. Oh, by the way, last night Perry Mason was the case of the shy burrow.
Now now let me see. The Perry Mason episodes on MeTV at night are about 3 or 4 seasons ahead of the ones that are occurring right now in the morning, or is it the other way around? I'm getting confused here. Or maybe the ones in the morning are the ones that are like season 7 or
I
season
thought
eight.
the ones in the morning were ahead of the ones in the evening, but then there
Yes,
was
you're
a
right.
then there were a couple episodes the other day that were in reverse. I don't know. I got a couple of upstate stats here. One from Timothy Veltman. He says between 1899 and 1950, There were two stretches of 15 straight years where Albany failed to reach 60 inches of total snowfall for the winter, which is roughly the current average, and that's double the average down at New York City. And another Briller fact was so from 1979 to 1993, depending on what normal number you use, but if you use the high long-term normal number of about 20, slightly less than 29 inches, 14 consecutive years of below average snowfall. And you and I remember that stretch.
Yes,
And now,
yes,
and it should be made clear, by the way, again, once when you talk about these, we're talking about single points here. Just because it happened in New York City, that's the spot that we have a long history of numbers. But you can find that the numbers are quite different within as little as 5 or 10 miles of those points. You can look at LaGuardia's numbers, Kennedy's numbers, Newark's numbers, Islip's numbers, which are defective anyway. And but you look at Brookhaven Labs, which is 55 miles east of New York City, and there were a number of years peppered in that mix that were above average for one reason or another. So you got to be careful when you use these climate stats if you try to overgeneralize the geography.
yeah. Now, would you agree that after we get through this atmospheric atrocity this weekend, that after we get past this weekend, that we could conceivably go through all of next week without any significant precipitation? In fact, we could go through all of next week with basically fair and dry weather.
But very cold weather because it is going to be cold next week.
Oh,
Temperatures are temperatures are going to average well below normal all week long. I agree with you. It will be mostly dry. I think the only thing that might interrupt that you've got this upper trough that's going to be swinging through here Monday and Tuesday. So maybe there's a snow shower with that. I didn't really look at it too close, but other than that, no major systems. I would also say that after late next week the way the upper air is looking to me, don't be too shocked if we're talking about another weather system of importance for next weekend, perhaps,
Right.
or going
Right.
into Sunday and Monday, the 26th and 27th. But I got the radar up right now, Joe, and there's a little bit of action coming off of Lake Ontario and streaking across upstate New York. It looks like there's some snow aloft there, and we've got some showers down in the western half of Pennsylvania that are moving eastward, and I have them in my forecast for the early morning hours as this cold front comes through, and then we're going to just go crazy with the wind. I'm going to bring the surface map up so everybody can see. The gradient on Thursday is very tight.
Right, and because of that tight gradient, I'm mentioning a chance between midnight and dawn of a few scattered showers with the approach and passage of the cold front. But during tomorrow, I'm saying more clouds and sun. And because the winds are going to be so stiff out of the northwest by midday and afternoon, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that we could see a flurry or a fast-moving snow shower come whirling on through. Temperatures won't be below freezing tomorrow afternoon, but still, if you're walking around and you look skyward and you see a few flakes in the air, that would not be surprising. That probably would be driven all the way from the Great Lakes southeastward by those strong and gusty northwesterly winds.
By the way, north of this low is actually tracking, pretty much right along the Pennsylvania New York line and running east along I 90 as it moves eastward. And then it blows up into a nice little storm southeast of Nova Scotia as it moves out tomorrow. So, as we said, the gradient does get very tight and stays tight into Thursday night, Friday morning. The other thing is, the NAM at least is actually producing a fair amount of snow for northern New York and into Maine. I'm just going to bring up, let's see if they've updated this. If it goes out, no, well, it does go out certainly for the short range. I just want to see. Oh, good. So this will take us right through maybe through Saturday evening, so we could see what the Weather Service is doing with the snow amounts for Saturday. So let's start with. I'm going to load up upstate New York and northern New England with the Weather Service snow forecast amounts for tonight. I mean, basically, it looks like a 3 to 6, 4 to 7 snowfall, except for the usual suspect higher amounts in some of the mountaintops. But it's fairly widespread up in that part of the world. This is. I'm sorry. I'm going to run it a little further into Saturday. Let me give it to the time frame ending Friday night. Okay, so this is all from this low that's going by to our north. And now the end time is 7 a.m. I'm sorry, 7 p.m. And you can see what the Weather Service is doing across Pennsylvania and southwestern New York for Saturday, showing some 3 and 4 inch amounts through much of the state. So the cold air or the holding on to the cold air is going to be very important. Those amounts lessen across Long Island and southeastern New York, southern Connecticut, south of Route 84. The Weather Service only seems to be going for an inch or two of snow in this zone. I don't know, Joe. I think that might be. I may not have a whole lot of problem with it for the immediate coastal areas as far as a forecast is concerned, but and when you're talking up your way or up near Danbury, northern New Jersey, in Bergen County, I don't know. I might want to nudge those numbers up a little bit over there in
Yeah, I didn't,
that
I
area.
didn't like the fact that in the technical discussion, they really are sweeping the warm air in most everywhere. The only place where they made an exception was extreme western Orange County, where they talked about, well, it may hold on to snow for a longer period of time, and up there, it may actually warrant advisory criteria. In other words, they're not even thinking right now that the snowfall in the immediate tri-state area may be warranting some kind of a winter weather advisory. And I always thought that quite honestly, I don't even know anymore what a winter weather advisory criteria is. I've seen it sometimes issued when there's only an inch or two of snow. Certainly, I think that New York City and environs could squeeze out an inch or two out of this. But they're bringing in the warm air and saying it's going to change over to rain before the end of the afternoon. I don't really agree with that, but
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know what the I got to talk to Bill Goodman and ask him what the criteria is because he's at the Upton office. And of course, Mount Holly, the numbers are different for the coastal counties of New Jersey versus the counties inland versus the northwestern counties. So they all have different ranges. By the way, across the Great Lakes, where we have those winter storm watches and winter weather advisories up. We're seeing forecast amounts of 8 to 12 inches across Wisconsin and Michigan, even some 1 foot plus amounts on the Upper Peninsula, which is probably some lake effect, but also producing a 1 to 3, 1 to 4 inch snowfall in a stripe. Chicago 4, Milwaukee 6, Grand Rapids 6 to 8, Detroit 6, 1 to 3 across much of Ohio. You can see the numbers in Pennsylvania, Northwest PA in particular. So there's probably some lake effect that's involved toward the end after the low goes by. So this is not a half bad system. It's not I wouldn't call it a powerhouse. A lot of this is being driven by warm advection, but nonetheless, it is significant. And of course, you can see the big numbers continue out in the west, up the Sierra Nevadas and up through the Cascades. And the snow that's being forecast, even for coastal areas. They got a 1 print for Seattle, and then they've got the mountains that are to the northwest of Seattle. There's a 58 print, so that's got to be a mountaintop of some sort.
Well, the coastal range or the Cascades are right there. Uh, Mount Rainier and Mount Hood and those areas. So, and that is the snowiest part of the country. I
Yes.
I think Mount Rainier is the has recorded some of the snowiest amounts on an annual basis of any place in the United States, even areas that are right down, getting lake effect.
Now, why couldn't our ancestors, when they arrived here, be it by boat or by plane, decide that when they got to New York that they would just migrate to the to those mountains and live there? Why couldn't they have done that?
Huh, huh.
If only
I'm
because of the
looking.
fact that when you're raising snow lovers as children, being up in those mountains is probably not a half bad place to be. But um, you want to be at least low enough where you've got some humanity around you, because a lot of those spots that are getting those big numbers, people don't live there, or very
You know,
few do.
I'm looking at the 18Z 12 kilometer NAM,
Right.
and it shows that by 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, for much of the tri-state area for the Hudson Valley, I mean, nothing has really happened or is happening yet. Then, as I said, like a wall, the snow begins moving in probably after 1 or 2 o'clock. It's snowing steadily and lightly by 4 o'clock. Again, if you take this at face value, by 7 o'clock Saturday evening, it could very well be snowing to beat the band across Westchester County, much of Long Island. Oh, South Shore of Long Island looks like they're in the green, so they may be seeing a mix over to rain. But again, most everybody still is seeing more snow than rain at 7 o'clock, and
Yes.
at 10 o'clock, goodbye.
Yeah,
So
on this particular run, the Nam actually on this particular run, where it's changed, it's got more snow in northern New Jersey, down almost to, but not quite to Route 195. But also Long Island on the prior runs was rain by 7 o'clock. Now it's snow. Now
right,
I want to be a little careful here, because is that a function of it being colder, or is that a function of the fact that maybe it's a little bit slower? Because this particular run, the leading edge of accumulating snow isn't even at New York City at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday.
yeah,
So, yeah,
it's always been snow. It's always been not always, but it has been slowing up. And so I wouldn't be surprised if at 1 o'clock in the afternoon people step outside. And I wouldn't be surprised, Joe, if at 1 o'clock on Saturday you step outside, look up, and hey, isn't that the sun? You can still see the sun
sun
through
dimly visible.
that
Well,
kind of
I
thing.
can tell you right now, out here on Long Island, if there's a south wind, it could be 18 or 19 or 20 degrees for the low at 7 a.m. And I could be at 38 or 9 very easily be up at 38 or 9 by noon or 1 o'clock. I won't
Right.
lose it aloft. So if I wind up, as long as the precip has some kind of intensity, it'll, as soon as it starts snowing, the temperature will back down. But if there's any kind of a wind of 5 or 10 miles an hour, it can, those low levels can warm up in a hurry. I put the NAM up there while you were talking. Now, oddly enough, the 850, Joe, is very cold. The 850 The
Right.
zero line is down near Atlantic City at 7 o'clock, and it still looks like it's about -3 at 8:50. I'll bring up the contours to see it differently. Um, yeah, I mean it's -3 is at Staten Island, -6 at 8:50 is it goes from the North Fork of Long Island to about White Plains, and then runs west northwest along 287, right along the New Jersey New York state line. So that level of the atmosphere is very cold. So obviously there's something going on in the bottom part of the atmosphere as far as temperatures are concerned that causes it to change over to rain.
Well, the NAM 2 meter air temperature at 0Z on Sunday or 7 p.m. Saturday night has the zero line just making it up into the southern end of Westchester County. All of Long Island is above zero or 32 Fahrenheit. The city is above zero, but it's only just making it up into the lower end of Westchester by 7 p.m. And then by 10 o'clock, that zero line charges northward across Westchester all the way up past where I am, and yet it's keeping a good part of Orange County and western sections of Rockland County below zero. So
It looks like I'm looking at the sounding, and it looks to me, Joe, that it's 900 millibars and up is below freezing. So it's that bottom 100 millibars. I pulled up the sounding for Islip at 0Z. It's got a temperature of 38. And the dew point is also 38. So I'm kind of thinking that that's probably rain, even if the map shows snow. New York City is 35. See now, like the freezing line there is probably maybe around 925 or 950 millibars. So it's the very bottom of the atmosphere that loses it. And I'll put up, let me get a point up by you. You're at 30 up by
yeah,
you on the sounding.
yeah,
So the rain snow line, if it's New York, if it's north of New York City, it's probably only just north of New York City. And then, by the
okay,
way, after this goes is done, look how cold it gets. I mean, the 850 just plummets all the way down. We get down to -15, -18, 850 temperatures along about starting from Monday and then to Tuesday and Wednesday. This is very cold air and a very cold weather pattern that is taking hold in the eastern for the eastern part of the United States.
yeah. And you know what, Joe, I'm looking at the soundings just as you were from my area, and by the time we get to 6Z or 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, I'm all of a sudden at 41 degrees. I mean,
Yeah,
can
I
I
mean
really?
it's like you're getting warm sector because the warm front's done. It's a warm front. That's all this is. The low redevelops in the Gulf of Maine, and all this is a warm front. So you'll briefly climb up, maybe to. It wouldn't be inconceivable that you could see temperatures climb up to the middle and upper 30s at least, and
Right,
then you wait for the whole thing to go by for the cold air to come back in on Sunday. Yeah, it's warm fronts with these warm advection warm front cases uh, can sometimes surprise you in terms of the snow that they can put down ahead of it.
right.
And also sometimes if it they can also go the other way. The point is that whichever one is the one you're forecasting, it'll be the opposite. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think I've for me to see the temperature jump from 31 or 32 at 7 o'clock into the low 40s, if this sounding is taken at face value, that's quite a jump for
Yeah,
even a robust warm front. But we'll see. And I also should point out, that I've said innumerable times, what we're looking at right now is the intermediate, the 18Z run, and I don't really have all that much faith in the 6Z and the 18Z. I would prefer to wait until later tonight
yeah.
when the
Well,
primary, the 0Z run comes
even
out.
even the 12 was a shade colder from what it was doing overnight and yesterday. But I got the upper air up so we could just really briefly go through the long range. But I rolled back to the pattern from yesterday. We have the just to show you how radically we are flipping here. in the span of 1 week. And this weekend system is the pattern flipper, essentially. But you had an upper high, a ridge off the southeast coast. You had a trough in the west and a ridge and an upper high up along 160. So this is about as unwintry for the east as you can get. And in as little as a week's time, we flatten the ridge out in the east to the point where it's like a pancake in the Gulf of Mexico. Your Saturday system. Well, first of all, you have your system for tonight that's moving out and strengthening near Newfoundland and heading up toward Greenland. And now your western trough is breaking down. Part of it gets ejected eastward, and suddenly, when you get to Monday and Tuesday, you have the opposite of what you just had. Deep trough in the east, going all the way down to Florida and northern Cuba with below normal heights out there. A ridge up the Rockies, and if you follow the flow, it's coming right down from Canada, from northern Canada, into the Great Lakes and into the southeastern part of the United States. There are troughs off the west coast. There's a trough at 160. Again, different, totally different here with regards to the weather pattern. And moving on, I'm going to leave that view here that I just drew in for Tuesday, and you'll notice that going forward, the trough kind of wants to stay in the east all week. Then when it pulls out, you get energy that starts shifting eastward back into the east next weekend. And this is some of the conversations that have been going on in a few places regarding maybe the potential for something next weekend. I can see, Joe, how it might happen. The upper flow, it does look dynamic enough. Now, how it plays out specifically, I don't know. But, I kind of, with this look, with energy coming down in that whole northern jet and dropping southeastward, and you have this trough in the east. I think there's room for something to happen maybe next weekend. How, I don't know yet, but I think there's room for something to happen.
It looks like just looks like a conveyor belt. January 19th, January 26th. Then we've got another system moving on through on January 30th. I mean, you want an active weather pattern. This is it. I mean, we have between now and the end of the month, we have three potentials coming this way.
Right.
We'll see how it's like a hockey game, you know. Apparently the goalie has been fairly successful to this point in keeping the snow puck out of the blue zone, so to speak. But it things we've got three shots between now and the end of the month, so we'll see how it all pans out.
And just for those of you are thinking with the weather month of February approaching, just want to bring up the CFS climate models. Starting from January 20th to January 29th, you can see how the climate models has now for next week mean trough in the east, mean ridge in the west, and look at the period from the 29th to February 5th. That is cold. With the way it's set up here, a very deep trough in the eastern half of the U.S., actually most of the area east of the Rockies, with a ridge along and off the west coast. February 5th to the 12th, deep trough, mean trough, looks like somewhere between 80 and 90 west, running from northern Canada all the way down to the Gulf states. It's still there on the 12th to the 19th, and still there from the 19th to the 26th. So what we're seeing, at least from the climate models and everything that's happening now going into it, is that this stretch of cold weather and maybe potential snow events along the way is going to last for quite a while. So if we can't get and of course, Joe, the mean pattern is one thing, but there's a lot of things in the short range pattern that you have to consider. And hey, there's no guarantee for snow lovers that they're going to wind up getting something of any consequence in the I-95 corridor from Washington to Boston. I think with a pattern like this, it certainly I could see how it can happen, but it doesn't guarantee it.
And I'm looking also, Joe, at the GFSX Moss guidance, and it's weird. For White Plains,
Excuse me.
Saturday, the conditional snow amount is just a meager 1, and then there's nothing on Sunday. And believe it or not, with that short wave that you talked about on Monday
Hmm.
passing by,
Right.
maybe trying to squeeze something out of that because they have a 1 on Monday for snow at
Really?
White Plains.
Well, that's sort of, that upper trough has got a decent look to it. So I wouldn't be shocked. I certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocked. I got us both on the full screen now. I think you're about a minute behind. Uh, my chat uh, thing is running at 100 miles an hour as it catches up. I think when I have it off screen, when I have it off screen and I'm doing the maps, it just stays where it is until I bring it back on my screen,
Hmm.
and then all the chats start rolling. So you've got a it's nope, it's still going. Oh, it's slowing down. So I can't. Look, you
Well, Tim
guys on
Bell.
the chat board are great. I really appreciate it. The conversations just go on with all the weather conversations. If I miss you, we miss your a question or a point that you want to bring out, we apologize ahead of time. Can you see
Tim Bell.
anything on your end?
Well, Tim Beltman says this is very reminiscent of a year ago, Joe. Um, Paul Roman says polar vortex, Joe C. Um, and most of us aren't Weather Channel watchers. uh, David Schwartz says most of us are not Weather Channel watchers. That's sad, you know. That's the Weather Channel was so good back in the day, and now it seems like nobody really watches it except to see what the name of the next winter storm happens to be. Uh,
Scott Briller went back and looked at a live stream from January 22nd last year, and you were talking about a year that if this storm in February didn't occur, New York City would have had 2/10 of an inch of snow for the entire winter. What year was that?
wasn't that wasn't that the winter we spoke about this where
83.
we had to wait until we had to wait until like the after the beginning of spring, and
No,
that's
but listen to how he's got this worded. It says a storm occurred in February, and had that storm in February not occur in that winter, New York City would have had all of 2/10 of an inch of snow for the entire winter.
huh. I don't I don't think he's talking about the is he talking about the eight? No, he couldn't be because I know in December of '82
There was
we
something.
we had some significant snowfall. And then we had the megalopolitan blizzard in February of '83 that dumped a lot of snow.
Right.
Those are really the only two, if I remember correctly, those were the only two of that winter that were standouts in terms of snowfall. And that
Well,
was also an El Nino year,
no,
82.
he says it was February.
Hmm.
I give up. I have well, if it wasn't for the snowfall in February, it we've only would have gotten 2/10 of an inch of snow for the whole winter.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. In 1995, February of 19,
February of '95.
that's what I would say right now. February, in fact, I can even mention the date. It was February, I think it was February 4th, 1995. It was a Saturday, Friday night into Saturday. I was at that time, I was on 1010 winds. I was the morning meteorologist on 1010 winds. And that particular winter, they were really complaining bitterly at 1010 winds about the fact that they kept telling me, the ratings of this station are driven by big winter storms, and we're not getting any this year. And finally, we got one in February of 1995. And it was almost like the management of 1010 Winds was blaming me for the fact that we weren't getting any winter storms. They were like very upset. They said, "Come on, we need a big storm." And finally, in February, I think we broke the ice. And yeah, I think if we hadn't gotten that one storm in early February, we probably would have had, less than an inch of snow for that whole winter season.
Right.
I'm wondering if that's the one that Scott is alluding to.
Well, we'll find out if he puts up the answer on the chat board. Peter Bicker, my thoughts on the models backing off the EPO going negative. That's on the 0Z run last night. The East Pacific Oscillation, or the EPO, was actually now shown to be slightly positive for the next 2 weeks. However, I would just be really careful when you look at these teleconnections because they cover such a huge amount of geography. Yeah, it's slightly positive, meaning that pressures up there are lower. But where are they lower? Are they lower off the west coast or just inland of the west coast, which is of the Pacific Northwest, which is part of the EPO's calculation, or are they negative? Are the pressures lower further west up in the northern part of the Gulf of Alaska toward the Aleutians? Because that's important. And I think what you're seeing here is the fact that the Pacific North America Index, which covers an even bigger amount of geography, both on the west coast and the east coast, goes from is going to be going neutral to positive this weekend after being super negative earlier this week. That goes to strongly positive. So I think that may compensate somewhat for the slightly positive EPO. And also, the North Atlantic Oscillation, or the NAO, is going to be straddling the neutral line for the next 2 weeks. A little bit negative, a little bit positive, a little bit neutral. So net of all those three things, it'll be enough to keep colder than normal temperatures the way the models are seeing it. So I'm not concerned about it from the perspective of a snow lover. I'm not overly concerned about it because it seems that the PNA is more than making up for it.
Is that
Uh,
did I answer your question?
yes.
I'm still looking to see whether or not I'm still looking to see whether or not my answer is correct. Scott Vriller says yes, Sat or yes, Saturday. Yeah, I remember definitely it was a Saturday, that storm in 1990, February of 1995. Um, and yeah, it was a lot of the snow lovers really were going through heck that winter season because it was and that finally broke the snow drought. Yeah, we didn't have anything December, January into early February, and that was the one storm that finally did it. We had something like in New York City, what 9, 10, 11 inches of snow, I something like that.
Right.
It made more than made up for what we had lost, the previous, 4 to 6 weeks. And
Scott Patton is asking about snow this week on Saturday in Reading, Pennsylvania. I'm going to take a guess. I'd have to look a little closer, but I kind of have them in that area of getting maybe 2 or 3 inches before any kind of changeover to rain. I certainly think that's possible, and maybe if it's a little bit colder there, because it might hold on for a little while in terms of the cold air, you could have a little bit of upside. Just hoping that the radar does its job. Um, let's see. Izzy says, I always ask you, Joe, if you agree, but Izzy is agreeing with me, thinking that maybe slightly lower than my earlier call on the southern end. You know what? We didn't do this, Joe. Let's go. Let's bring up WPC. See what the boys of WPC have to say.
okay,
All right. So hang on one second. I'll bring those up.
you're talking about winter weather now, right?
Correct. So WPC. Let's see if does it go out beyond 12Z on Saturday? Yeah, that goes to 0Z Sunday. Okay,
Right.
so they have. Well, this is kind of interesting. Well, now there's the delineations on this map are much more than they are on the other one.
Now,
So
what are you looking at? Are you looking at probability forecast or accumulation?
probability of at least 2 inches of snow. The green, not the light green, not the dark green, but the in between green, that which runs literally from Philadelphia to New York City, that green is a 20 to 30% chance of at least 2 inches. Just go north and west of there. So even like where Manhattan would be on this map, that's actually in the 40%. So from just north and west of Philadelphia to Trenton, to Newark, to the Bronx, to up I-95 into southern Connecticut, a 40% chance of at least two, and northeast Pennsylvania, I mean, 80% or higher. From Reading is at an 80% chance of at least two. So I'm going to jump up and put up at least four. So you can see where the 4 inches goes. 50%, 40% would be the darkest blue, Allentown kind of whips around. They got this funny looking map where they made a hole between Scranton and Binghamton with lower probabilities in between and higher probabilities of either side. But Joe, I got to tell you, for the Hudson Valley, for 4, the northern, the Connecticut Massachusetts line, if you extend that line westward, that is where the southern edge of 1% chance of 4 is.
Right.
So they're thinking, according to a couple of inches, for the coast and areas just inland of the coast, and that you probably have to go to northwest Jersey and then on up the Hudson Valley west of the Hudson, the Catskills, and then north toward I-90, where you could wind up with some of the higher amounts, where the cold air might hang on for a lot longer.
Well, it's like I said, coming in like a wall. You back up to 18 hours UTC. That's 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Everybody in the Hudson Valley, Long Island, Northern Jersey, Connecticut, there's nothing. And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden, 6 hours later, you're splashed with colors. This is for at least 2 inches of snow. So that tells me that when it comes in, it's going to come in, and probably between 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock, there will be a number of locations in the Hudson Valley that will put down 2, maybe as much as 3 inches. So we could see like a half or 1 inch per hour in some places during that 6 hour time frame. So, like I said, like a wall
yeah.
coming right in from the west.
North of I-90, it's a 75 to 100% chance of at least 2. And I'll just pop up the probability of at least 8. And that's going to be confined to the areas east of Lake Ontario and then way up in northeastern New York. And you got some minor 20 to 30% probabilities in northern Vermont and parts of New Hampshire. But 8 is this is not going to be, a clobbering 12 to 24 like we saw in the early December snowstorm
No, no.
in upstate New York. This is a totally different setup.
It doesn't sound weird, Joe. It's the 15th of January, and what you just said in that last sentence, we're not talking about like in Albany, the 22 incher that they had on the first day of December.
Yeah, the late fall and very first half of December for that area was pretty good. And then there's been a break these last 4 weeks, which the downstate folks really didn't get into it too much. I mean, although there were a few of those events that wound up being snow to ice in the Hudson Valley and in parts of and in northern New Jersey and on up into the Catskills. So there were a few winter weather events and also in through parts of Connecticut. So now we'll see. Hey, this is it, folks. We're seeing this major pattern shift or change, and the climate models say we hold on to it for a while. So if we can't do it now, we ain't going to do it at all. So coming up on 7:55 here. What do you say we call it a night?
Okay, we could do that. I'm just somebody just mentioned. I'm trying to find here. Somebody was making comparison between this winter and the winter of '97, where we had the April Fool's snowstorm here in the Hudson Valley, which dumped a lot of snow and knocked out a lot of power. But I'm not sure whether or not we're going to see something like that this year. I certainly hope not. I was living on Long Island, so I didn't have to worry about losing power on April 1st of '97.
Oh God. All right. So look, have a great night. Um, uh, See you tomorrow, and we'll see if throwing in the towel was a mistake or not by some people.
We shall see, Joe.
Maybe this is a surprise in the making for somebody. Who knows? All right. And then tomorrow night, of course, we are just started to get into the range of the Le Plumes. So we will be in range of Le Plumes
And we'll see.
tomorrow.
And by the way, thank you, J.A. Steele, for a super chats contribution tonight.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Thanks for being here. If you're new tonight, if this is your first time on, be sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Joe Chaffee, with your Gmail account, and then go over to Joe Rayo Weather, his YouTube channel, and subscribe to his. Because there are certain days where I might not be around. and Joe is does his live streams there. So you live streaming or you pre-taping?
No, I'm live streaming when
You're
I
live streaming. Okay, so
yeah.
there you go. So get over there to Joe Rayo Weather and subscribe. Okay. So a great night, everybody. Thanks for being here. We will see you tomorrow.
It's Thursday tomorrow.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
Bye.